here we are today. I'm here with Fran and Tom from JMS. It's really quite an interesting one because I've worked with Fran and Tom over the past few months, and it's brought to light for me what TV advertising is now about. For many, TV advertising had become a little bit unachievable. Is it past its time, or is it something that we should still look at? Personally, I think it's something that's held the test of time, and it's not something that we should ever overlook. The accessibility for TV advertising has become so much more to so many more brands, people. I'd like to introduce Tom and Fran. As I say, these are two people who, along with our agency, is another agency, JMS, have been around for 40 plus years. Are you 41 years old now?
41, yes. Yeah.
And that, for me, that sort of brought it forward when we worked together on a recent campaign, that the accessibility for TV advertising and its place in a much wider community is something that we should look at. So what I'd like to do is really just go back to where it all started. So what I want to do is, what are your views? Where is TV advertising today?
I think TV advertising is more relevant than ever because it's more... you can direct it so much better. You're not trying to hit huge markets. Not necessarily, you can do. But you can target it towards individual households. You can narrow it down to a smaller focus. And ultimately, that can make it more affordable for more brands.
I think that's quite an interesting one. And Fran, you run JMS here with Tom. And the affordability is something that's often put people off TV advertising.
Yeah, it's a myth that we can't outrun at the moment, that people feel that TV is just tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds, and it's just out of reach for everybody, apart from the really big brands. But that's absolutely not true. And the vast majority of the clients that we work with are small to medium businesses, SMEs that are trying TV for the first time. They only have a small pocket of money to spend. I mean, advertising campaigns can start in the low thousands, and it's on a par with what people might be spending perhaps on a Facebook campaign or a general online campaign or even, magazines or door drops or brochures. If you're spending, a few grand on those kind of things, then you should really seriously look at how TV compares to it.
If you're spending money on pay-per-click, you can probably afford TV.
Yeah, and I think that's quite important, Tom, that you bring up there. How does TV compared to where everyone thinks they should be spending their budget? So on TikTok or on a Facebook ad, why is that something that you think we can...
I think it's a fairly common misconception that TV isn't as trackable and addressable as online advertising, but you can target, again, by sort of keywords, viewing history, the demographics of households, even down to subscriptions and what other money that household is spending. That can be linked to their viewing boxes, their TVs, and you can target the ads down to very fine detail.
And I think that's where TV has now become a core part of account-based marketing or hyper-localised or hyper-personalised TV advertising. And you and I, Fran, we've had conversations before about how we justify and how we can actually model the adverts now to hit certain demographics.
Yeah. So TV advertising, you can choose your audience on a very fine basis. As Thomas said, you've got it to the household. So you can say, who am I looking to hit? Am I looking at families with children under 5? Am I looking at pet owners? Am I looking at people that want to travel on cruises? And so they have perhaps a high affluence level. There's so many different ways you can do it. And the broadcasters out there have really excelled in the last few years, certainly within the last 10 years, to show that addressable advertising, whatever you want to do, is very achievable for very small sums of money. And so businesses that might have discounted TV in the past because they thought they had to be the size of Walker's Crisps or Johnson & Johnson to go on TV to this mass market stuff, well, they don't need to be. They can literally target people within a 5-mile radius of their dealership or of the store, or they can target people nationwide, but only a certain type of people. So people that might be pet owners, or people that might be interested in travel, or people that might have children under the age of 2, and so they might want to advertise nappies to them. It's that kind of refined element that you can now target with TV that I think businesses are now starting to realise. And like online, you can now do all of that tracking on TV as well. So yeah, it's open to virtually every business that has just a small marketing spend, that they should seriously look at it.
Yes. And you do get feedback, very much like online advertising, that once those ads have been delivered, you can find out what actually happened as a result of that. Did that customer wind up in a store off the back of that? Did they purchase anything off the back of that? So you get that kind of analytics that you used to online, but you get it for TV now as well.
Yeah, because you've got the customer data that you can then reference back from, were they served that commercial? Did they then go and buy that product? Yeah, they did. Therefore, they saw the ad, and therefore you can prove it's worked.
And I think for me, as an agency owner, leader in the marketing world, working with, we're lucky enough to call you guys partners of ours, but then using those pieces of data to then drive our decisions forward to advise our clients. And I've talked to you several times before about the 3 A's. Are we accountable? Are we aligned to the client's needs? And are we agile enough? But having that data and having that feel of how has this landed with our audience is something that can bring it to life. Having worked with you recently, what was very, blatant to me was the ability for us to say, this is our objective. Over to you guys. What do you think, and how can we do that? And working collaboratively. How important is working collaboratively with your clients, be it an agency or be it an individual client direct? How important is that for you guys?
You could achieve so much more when you work collaboratively, because you can be very open with each other. How much money is on the table? What are you trying to achieve? What are the drawbacks in your business that this ad needs to address? And so you can produce something. You can push egos aside when you really work collaboratively and be very upfront with each other, and that usually turns into a far more effective campaign.
Yeah, we're just keen for clients to realise that we're not after a puff piece. There is a goal at the end of the day, and that is, sometimes it is as simple as, I just want my brand out there. I mean, we've worked on Food Hub campaigns, and their main thing was that they just wanted people to recognise the name. They wanted people to go into restaurants and go, oh, do you deliver through Food Hub and all of that kind of thing. But then a lot of clients obviously ultimately want to sell a product or a service, and so you've got a goal that we're all working towards. And so and clients know their brand better than anyone else does, so we're not vain enough to say, oh, well, we know all about TV. Well, we may know a lot about TV, but we don't necessarily know everything about what the client's business is or what it's trying to achieve. So the sounding boards, I think we can be a really good sounding board. We work well with clients because we'll sort of question things a little bit. I know when we worked with you in the recent campaign, you've got a creative idea and we come at it from a different angle, and so we can say, well, have you thought about this as well? And, clients will come up with fantastic ideas, and we just try and push that a little bit further, or say, have you thought about, changing it a little bit? And so when you've got clients that are really open to being in a partnership with you, you sort of trust each other that you're ultimately got the same goal, which is to have an ad that is fantastic, but also works fantastically as well. Because ultimately, we want the client to come back and go, that campaign just blew us away. I want to do another one. I mean, we've got one of our clients that we do regular commercials with, and I love it when he phones me up and goes, oh, you're going to have to pull that ad because I've run out of stock. That's exactly what you do feel a bit, oh, what a waste of an ad. It's only been on air 3 days. But it's worked. So it's done its job.
And you've achieved the goal.
Yeah.
You've achieved that goal. So just talking about the recent campaign we've worked on, that was a first for this client. So it was looking at what can we do to bring Christmas to life. Cherry Lane is a client. It's a brand of garden centres across the east of England and reaching slightly north. How did you find, and it's quite nice for you guys because the film location was fairly local to the offices here in Norfolk. And that was quite nice for me as well because it's fairly local. But how did you find that whole journey from engaging with us, coming up with the concept? And it's worthwhile just going through that process.
Well, it was nice having a very original concept because, there is a sort of history of local advertising that sometimes some campaigns look very similar to how they always have. You take influence from press or whatever and you fold that into the TV campaign. But now that they're more affordable, more targetable, we were able to take a more creative kind of approach with it and come up with something more interesting, I think.
Yeah, so your team had the idea of having an idea where you follow Father Christmas once the store's closed, and it was sort of based on an ASMR feeling, I think. And so it's sort of heavy on the visuals and just the sound effects and sort of real close-up things. And I think the when we were having the initial conversations, we're like, oh, we love this is great, and we could really see how it works. And I think we sort of demoed up some ideas based on some sort of stills that you had and came up with some thoughts of it. But we then sort of thought about, well, we sort of turned it on its head and went, what would the negative be of having a Christmas ad that's all very focused on sound effects? And we sort of said, well, you do want to be careful that it doesn't seem too spooky because we're in a store at night or whatever. So we sort of suggested that maybe having some sort of music behind it would, but not banging in straight away and not being the absolute focus of it. And you were very keen as the agency to not have a voiceover on it. I think that was very much the right call because people are... could emotionally connect with it better. I think it was just from the start. It was just these beautiful visuals and the lovely soundtrack and the snow footsteps and the kind of the crunch feel and all the little kind of sound effects that were built in it as what sort of told the story. And a voiceover didn't need to come in. It didn't need to do anything more because you could see that where we were. You could see the store, and I think people sort of. Hopefully feel that people would engage with it without the typical advert that you might have for a local retailer at Christmas might be, going along and pulling things off the shelf and roundels and prices and sell kind of thing.
This had a pleasant subtlety to it.
Yeah. Cherry Lane, obviously, you felt connected with the brand and it felt more of a destination piece.
It would have been very easy to do, 2-for-1 offers or whatever and make a very generic ad, but no, this has a nice festive feel and it's a nice branding piece.
And I think bringing emotions to life is allowing the viewer to actually view from their point of view, which is very different to the written word. Which it goes back to the discussions we've had before. Is why is video so powerful? Because a written word is quite dictatorial. You read it, you go, I am being told this, whereas video allows the consumer of that piece of content to go, oh, actually, I can see it from that direction. Certainly with Cherry Lane, I think that was a big step forward for Cherry Lane and the brand as a whole, because it could have had lots of call-outs of 2-for-1 offers and what have you. But on this occasion, it was let people think about what can I find, what can I explore? Because having explored the set and working 2 night shifts there, which I found very... dissettling to my it's very unusual for me to be awake at that time and not let alone be working, but it was just that exploration, because I think each time we went around the store, and they do this, and they do that, and bringing that to life. So the emotion was quite key there, particularly working with animals. There was a bit of a nervy thing.
But I think that was quite nice. We were able to bring in because humour works very well, particularly in the UK advertising market, and we were able to bring in the scene where Father Christmas, obviously he's got his staffy reindeer with him, and he was able to sort of squeeze the carrot toy, so you had a product that you could actually buy. And so there was product placement throughout that commercial, all the way through it, but it was done so it really felt part of the story. And as Father Christmas walked around the store and he interacted with things, and then you're in the cafe and the dog's sitting there, and it was all these subtle ways that you were very keen as an agency to show you can buy this, you can buy this, you can buy this, and you can have dogs in the cafe, you can do all of that. But it was done, so subtly, I suppose, is the way that it felt. It wasn't there was nothing shoehorned in. Often you end up having to shoehorn something in because you need to kind of say something. Whereas I think it was all conveyed very nicely in a very nice package.
And it was very nice that there was space left in the creative for a little improvisation as well. There were several shots that didn't make it into the finished cut, but in terms of selecting products on the evening, the chocolate coins just, that was the icing on the cake, really, when we saw those and thought, everyone associates those with festive things. So that made the final edit, and that was something that wasn't necessarily storyboarded. We just saw it and thought, that's going to really make the ad.
And I think that's quite important. I mentioned the agility in how we run campaigns, but agility in your role of running we worked throughout there. We saw something new, dressing the entrance, for example. I think that was very different to what we'd envisaged. And my goodness, did that work really well?
Yeah. And that also is part of the affordability in how you make it accessible to smaller brands, is that you can have that bit of improvisation, make use of things that are there, borrow, bring family, get people involved, that kind of thing. And you can create very creative results without necessarily having to pay big money to actually get any of these things done. It can look good on screen without necessarily investing a huge amount in these things.
Or if you are going to invest a little bit more money, as you did on the snow side of things, it's got to work and it's got to be worthwhile. And I think if we hadn't had the snow, it would have still made a great commercial because we can do things like that. But I just think the snow really is just lovely when you got Father Christmas and you're setting the scene and you want to show off that entrance and that kind of first shot where he steps down from the sleigh after obviously turning off the store light. I think the snow really kind of finished it off. And so I think when you talk about budgets with clients, yes, you can do everything pretty cost effectively, and we would encourage any clients to any prospective businesses to think cannily about their budget. But sometimes when a production company or an agency says, look, I think you need a little bit more money and this is where it should be spent and this is why, the snow was a good example about just pushing the boat out a little bit more, because it's so much worth its value in terms of the finished piece.
Investing wisely in the details that people are going to pick up on that are going to make it work. Yeah.
It's that accountability, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can we be accountable for suggesting that to you? What does it actually mean? The so what? I'll often say, so what will that mean to you as a brand? That's a great idea, but so what does it actually mean? And dealing with the Christmas, we won't mention budgets of others, and we won't mention particular ones, but this time of year, and particularly in the last couple of weeks, where all of the other big brands are really making a big play on their Christmas campaign.
With 7-figure budgets.
Exactly that. And I was really quite proud to see what we'd produced. And it wasn't a 7-figure budget, but what we'd produced in comparison to some of these larger brands. But and we've had plenty of coffees off camera around which ones we refer, which ones we got, which ones maybe missed the point a little bit, which ones are just...
But yeah, the important thing is that you are being part of a comparison. When you're advertising in any other medium, you're not necessarily seen alongside anyone else, so you're not part of that party, as it were. But when you're on TV, people don't know that your ad costs less than this ad or what people's media spend is. You're in the same ad break, so you are comparable to the rest. You're a player if you're on TV.
But you're more important if you're a recognised local brand.
Exactly.
So that's where the addressable TV advert works again, because you've got the creative there. You're in the ad break alongside the really big brands. You might be coming straight after a Tesco advert, and you might be in the middle of a Game of Thrones show, but your brand is seen as equal to that, and the conversation is then with that, and you sort of get lifted up with it. And the as seen on TV thing is still a case now. Decades later, from when people sort of put it on the banner of a magazine or whatever, it still works. And TV has a halo effect. So even after you've gone off air, people will remember that. I mean, I remember we did some market research for an electrical retailer. They had an event at the showground, and we were surveying them. And it was, have you seen us advertised anywhere? And it was TV, radio, press, and then a little bit of online. But this was a few years ago, before they did a huge amount. And people were like, yes, we have seen you, and it was TV, but we hadn't been on air for 12 months.
Absolutely.
So it was radio and press and online that they'd actually probably seen, but they just remember the TV, the halo effect. There's a long tail with all TV advertising. It usually goes on for a few months. I mean, that's a bit unusual, sort of a year later, but people, you've been elevated to that status. And so it's very powerful, basically, compared to all the other platforms, I would argue. And we do lots of radio advertising, and we do content for online as well. But the TV, and because it's now open to virtually anyone with even very small budgets, it's well worth exploring.
And I think you mentioned the other channels there as well. So the online. So if we talk about your earned media. So we've got your own media through the mention, I have seen you, or I have shared that. And if you can have the emotion, or you can have something a little bit different where someone comments, you've got that earned. But the actual owned media that you're delivering it through, because of TV, you can then take sound bites. And we talked about it earlier, it's having sound bites out of a larger production. And that can then be justifiable to make decisions in the future.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we produce anything, we do try and do it on a bit of an online buyout basis as well, so we know it's going on TV. And obviously, if it's certain ads, you can't necessarily repeat them because they might be offer-based or something specific in Christmas. You can only really run at Christmas. But generally, you've got that content and it can be reused again and again and then repurposed. And so we'll, especially if you film something, you've got, hours worth of films. You may have 2 or 3 hours worth of footage that you can then use for your online campaigns, and then you build on that, and then they all kind of reflect back to the main one that might have been on TV. What's great is when people have seen your ad on TV, then they go to your website or they go to your store, and then they see further content, and it's almost like a bit of remarketing, but they see further touch points, and then they're reassured that they're in the right place, and then they dig deeper and find more information. So as a production company, we always try and sort of package up to the client that you can get a lot more bang for your buck. So if you're going to invest in this TV commercial, we know it's a big investment, even if it's, it could be seen as a small pot of money to the really big players. Well, to you, it's a huge amount of money. It might represent 6 months worth of your marketing budget. And we know that it's really important, and it's got to work very hard, not just on TV, but potentially online as well.
Yeah.
So
the social media teams always love a TV campaign, because not only do they benefit from extra search or whatever, but they have the behind the scenes. They've got extracts from the commercial that they can use, so it provides all the other marketing functions a lot of extra collateral as well as part of the TV campaign.
It is very much that. It's that reusable, isn't
Yeah.
it? You can reshape it.
yeah.
One of the emotive things, moving on from Christmas, one of the emotive things that I'm quite often asked about is where does AI fit into the world of marketing? I've got lots of views on that, but today I want to talk to you guys about where does AI and how do you feel that it fits in the TV and production world, and what does that mean?
It's quite useful for experimenting with potential concepts. I mean, storyboarding, for instance, there's certain things that it can generate a visual that can help explain to a client what you're suggesting to make. But you wouldn't necessarily use that as the final campaign. So you can use it illustratively. But ultimately, clients will want to have their own products in a commercial, their own people in a commercial, their own stores in a commercial. And you can't necessarily replicate that in a virtual environment. You've actually got to go and film it, and you've got to go and see it.
Yeah, AI is great for experimentation and for sort of trying things out. And we have done that with some elements of things when you're sort of having a play around with a concept. But I think, the creativity of humans is still something that AI is not, as far as I can see, going to beat for quite some time. And we've actually had clients that have come on and have given us some elements of stuff which have been made with AI, and you can spot it. And it can work for a brief campaign, so they have an element of it, but I think you're going to get to the point where more and more people might try AI for things, and then everyone else is going to go, well, I can see that I'm going to cut the wheat from the chaff here. I'm going to come in and do it, bring humans in. So it's, I think, I'm hoping that the way we've been using it is to do some of the grunt work, to do some of the initial stuff, to do some of the kind of day-to-day things that you might need, and to test things and to bring things in. And because we work at the lower end of the budgets, I think it can only help us with some areas of it. Not cutting corners, but, trying things out and doing smaller things. But ultimately, when the client's got the budget, the creative team behind it are the humans. And AI is still, I think we've talked about this before, it's a computer, isn't it? So it's, it's got one way of thinking, and it's only as good as the input that it's had from those humans that have inputted into the AI kind of thing. Whereas it's got limitations in that basis.
So far, it hasn't removed any of the things that people actually enjoy doing.
Yeah, creativity. I'm not
the creative stuff people enjoy doing.
It's emotion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Creativity comes from a lot of emotion, and I think
AI is emotionless.
It is fairly binary. It is a computer program. It is machine learning. And there's lots of people out there who will have lots of opinions. I am not an AI specialist by any stretch of the imagination, but there is an element there, as you say, that there's some of the early heavy lifting that can be done. But it comes down to award-winning campaigns that meet the needs and the objectives of the client or the brand or the audience, is something that needs that human input to come up with the creativity. I think recently Ben Affleck has been fairly vocal on that point of it will never replace Shakespeare and it will never replace award-winning films, but it will help you along the way. So if you were to, I mean, and you probably get this all the time, if you were to give a couple of people some advice, or a couple of pieces of advice, should I say, where would you suggest that a client of medium-sized business starts if they want to get into the world of TV or video advertising? Where do they start?
Well, come talk to JMS is what I'd say. I think they can. You can see. So there's big players in the market. You've got for the lower budget stuff where it's very addressable TV advertising. You can do this with a lot of what we call linear TV. But AdSmart from Sky is a fantastic platform. It's where you choose the household rather than the program or the specific spot on a channel that you might want to get. So if you think your audience watch ITV and ITV1 or whatever, or ITV3, you'd have to choose that channel and hope they're watching it. Whereas with AdSmart, but also with video on demand, which you have on Sky and you also have on ITV and other platforms as well, you're choosing the audience member, and I think that's worth exploring. Thinking, well, who's my audience and how do I reach them? But people that are looking to do TV, they should really talk to a broadcaster, talk to a production company such as JMS, or talk to, though, also the media agencies and the creative agencies and say, look, this is my brand. Try and get a kind of breadth of experience and see the brands, such as your agency that have tested the market. Talk to those people that have already done it and say, how's it work for you? What kind of spend did you need to do? What's the kind of return? Is it achievable? But I think as long as you're spending any kind of small sum online or on press or something like that, then you are in the market zone to try TV advertising. And there's lots of people out there that are very excited to talk about TV and to get you on board, whether that's the media agency and creative agency, the broadcaster or the production company. And they'll just ask questions because we're all keen. We've got several case studies on our website for both ITV and AdSmart, where local businesses talk about why they use the platforms and what it's meant for their business. And then you can see, it's a similar kind of business size to your own business. And then you think, well, if they can do it, then maybe I should seriously start thinking about it. So case studies are a great place to start as well. That sort of just popped into my head. But yeah.
Yeah, I think probably the best starting place is to figure out the one thing that you're really trying to achieve. Certainly at the outset of a campaign, people want to. They think the ad is a be-all and end-all, and they have to put everything in it. And I think if you can narrow down the one thing that you want the campaign to achieve, then that's a good starting point for discussion.
So, I think that there's just going back to one of the points you just raised there. Is actually the case studies, and we've talked about case studies, and I'm going to have a slight segue into some of the other audiences that we've worked with, both of us have worked with, which is the professional services sector. And sometimes it's very hard to bring what may be quite not dull
a dry subject.
I think dry is a word. But that's for both of us, for both us as For Agency and you guys as JMS. That's been a great area of success for many of our clients, is bringing to light their dry subject matter. And so working on that case study point is probably something that I think we've got an opportunity to focus on in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, case studies work very well, and they sort of explain all the areas that you can do things. I mean, working with we've done quite a bit for the services, and we did a fantastic campaign actually for a solicitors firm. We did several Wilson Brown solicitors. They actually won some awards for it for marketing, because they were very keen not to be seen as the boring, dry, dull service agency. So we actually did an animated campaign on some serious subjects. One of the commercials was based on medical negligence. It shows that you can can do that with video, you can do it with TV and radio and all these ideas and stuff. So I'd say if you were, a solicitors or an accountants, I mean, we did Tax Assist Accountants, we did their launch campaign as well. So we've worked with quite a lot of professional services brands who really want to kind of go out there and talk to people. And we've got numerous examples of those as well, actually. So just because you're in that industry doesn't mean that you can't have some fun and do some good content, and that's the way to reach new audiences.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, guys, I've been very lucky to work with some global brands, and global brands on building their brand equity or selling their services. But we're talking about people with huge budgets. What has been so refreshing to me, and why we're sitting here today, is your approach, where we don't have to have these huge global budgets to make a real difference, utilising a channel of marketing that people think is out of reach. So I've got to thank you guys so much for that. But also thank you for coming in, and I'd like to keep these discussions going, because I think there's a lot of people can learn a lot of things on how actually TV advertising, video advertising is so much more addressable now. Addressable TV, everyone seems to talk about it, but little know how to actually apply it correctly. And I think little knowledge can be very dangerous at times, but making sure that you've got a safe pair of hands that you can pass that opportunity into. So from my perspective, guys, TV advertising and video is absolutely one of the channels that we at 4 will be focusing on, working closely with JMS and in future clients, inviting them to come and speak to us. If you've got an idea, speak to us. Speak to these guys, because everything starts with an idea. If we don't have creativity or an idea, we don't have a route forward. So please get in touch with us.